All right, so I'm going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the 12 Steps Path to Freedom Multi-Fellowship Focus Big Book Workshop. My name is Lisa, and I'm excited that you are here to improve your lives by tenfold. I have been a student of the 12 Steps for decades, and my focus has been here, there, and everywhere. It's easier to explain it that way. So please join me in a set-aside prayer with the willingness and the desire to have an open mind and open heart with the gift of forgiveness as we apply our 9th step final leg. God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, my step 9, and my recovery so that I may have a new experience with my 9th step, my forgiveness, but especially my relationship with others. So, back on page 14, we looked at the second half of step 1, and Bill said, it's simple, but not easy. And also that a price is going to be paid. And what he meant was the destruction of self-centeredness. That's the price we pay. The work is the dismantling of the false self, the deflation of the ego at depth. Step 9 is the only step powerful enough to accomplish such an immense task. Then on page 77, Bill says, our real purpose is to be other-centered. And this is the turning from ourselves to others. And in this case, it is about the people we have harmed. We agreed at the beginning that we would go to any lengths for victory over our addictions. And this is where we're going to be tested in our true desire to be victorious. Admitting we are or were wrong is not a comfortable action for us. In our vulnerability, we learn to protect ourselves from so many dangers that we knee-jerk anything that resembles our looking less than. Bill says, having had a spiritual awakening, and Bill uses the poetic metaphor of rocketed into the fourth dimension to give it gusto. He first spoke of this metaphor back around page 25, and it is such a great metaphor to rocket into a fourth dimension. But we need to ask ourselves, what does the fourth dimension mean? In essence, when somebody experiences being rocketed into a fourth dimension through the 12 steps, they have undergone a profound shift in their thinking in the way of living that allows them to experience life in a new and more meaningful way, free from the destructive patterns of our unmanageability. In 1939, when Bill wrote the Big Book, he had a spiritual experience where it was very mystical and spiritually charged. He was rocketed to his spiritual center and described it to be atop a mountain and the light, he could feel it. And he likened it to a clean wind blowing through him. And he felt he was 100% in the presence of light of the divine creator. He was completely aware that by the end of his 20-minute ethereal experience, that his addiction problem had been removed permanently, without a doubt in his mind. And this is Bill talking about that experience.
If there is a God, will he show himself? And then came the miracle. Great central experience of my whole life. The room instantly lit up in a blinding glare of white light. I was seized by an ecstasy such as I had never known. It seemed to me that I then stood on a mountaintop where a great clean wind was blowing. I thought to myself, but this is not air, this is spirit. This is the God of the preacher.
I don't know if anyone's heard his voice before, but I was a little surprised at hearing it. It's pretty deep and raspy. So the fourth dimension is beyond the material world. It is the spiritual dimension, non-measurably, unverifiably. The rocket launch is the metaphor. And when we are willing to follow this concept, we see the rocket is the vehicle of transportation and we need to climb aboard. It will not come and scoop us up. We have to see to it that we find it and then we jump on board. The best part of this is that although this may come as a challenge for many of us, once we do get on the rocket and we allow it to deliver us to where it wants to bring us, we have taken the first step of surrender to the mindset and experiences that we will need and can't do without. The assistance paired with our surrender allows us to take it to where it is going. I would like to say it's as easy as all of that, but not usually until we take a deep look at ourselves, which we did in step 4 with the inventories to remove our obstacles that are blocking us from the sunlight of the spirit. And whatever the name of the source of power that you use or choose, the rocket ship is promised to deliver us to the fourth dimension. We have established a connected relationship with the metaphoric rocket of power, with its promise to deliver us to our long-awaited destination of freedom. Then we can establish a new relationship with ourselves. We co-create our experiences in reality, and it is not done without us, but it is done to us. And we see on page 75 the reference to this journey of walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. How incredible is that? But we needed to find our personal rocket in order to climb aboard. But remember, the power and support of our rocket will take us where it is going, which is the co-creation. Our hand-in-hand relationship will continue and forge us forward. So in the first 3 steps, we find and establish a relationship with the power. And then in the next 4 steps, we establish our relationship with ourselves. And with the next 2 steps, we establish a relationship with others by removing the dark clouds, walls, and shadows. The cancers are now being removed. Part of the process of step 4 through step 9 is establishing a relationship with ourselves and a relationship with others. It captures the forgiveness process successfully. If you look up the word forgiveness in a dictionary, it will say, forgiveness is a conscious, voluntary decision to release feelings of resentment, anger, and vengeance towards someone who has harmed you, regardless of whether they deserve it or not. Forgiveness is not an invitation to reconcile with our abusers, even if they might be parents, siblings, or our children, as we may not want to be around them anymore. No explanation is required for how you feel about certain people, and this does not open the door to allowing others to hurt us again. Forgiveness is a decision to release them, and when we do, we ironically are the ones who are released. And in the process of releasing them, the actions we take releases us. In step 4, we name our resentments, fears, and pains that we've experienced. Then we try to understand what happened by looking at how it affected us in column 3. Column 3 showed us our old useless ways of struggling through life as self-imposed victims. And then in column 4, we get that confirmation of that prior life full of unmanageability and disturbance, and we get to choose again. Column 3 allows us to identify these often subliminal rules that we have carried for often decades without questioning them. And we see them as our personal belief system, and we are attached to them through our egos. It's the distorted lens of that ego through which we look at reality. I look through the lenses of my warped beliefs, my self-imposed realities, and that is how I determine what really is. But now I am looking at my old skewed beliefs when we did our column work, and you likely noticed how we were shocked and ashamed by the delusions that were so conflicting that we were allowing to run our lives. The key words to reveal your beliefs will begin with you should, they should, life should, etc. When we complete any sentence using those words, we build an unrealistic world through our wrong perceptions. So ask yourself, is it true? Is it objectively true, or is it just a story that we have been told or that we tell ourselves that isn't even true? It could be a story from our family or from our religious establishments, from friends and family or our culture. Sometimes they're true and sometimes they're not. Then in the fourth column, we took a look at reality, my role, my responsibility. And we look at our own attitudes and motives, and again, we may be embarrassed and shocked. It is jolting to see the corrupt nature of our motives, which are all about our egos. We perhaps can't believe that we aren't who we thought or believed we were. The mirror has cracked and the jig is up. This is the process of identifying and understanding and accepting reality as it is. Me as I really am, and taking responsibility fully for the good and the bad and the ugly of my life. In the column 4 work of our resentments, inventory, fear inventory, and sexual deviances inventory, we'll identify the distorted principles that we have had and ignored the principles that we would have wanted in order to be a decent human being that has eluded us. With our humiliation, we accept it and we take the needed action in step 5. In order to be transparent and to confess it in steps 6 and 7. Again, we do more inventory on how all of this manifests through my emotions, knowledge, and actions that has impacted other people. From a mental health perspective, forgiveness is more about you than the person you're forgiving. It is about what is happening in your mind and emotions rather than anything else. It is setting yourself free from whatever that person did. There are several benefits to forgiving. It reduces stress and anxiety. Holding grudges increases tension in your body, improves emotional well being. It is not letting the hurt live in your head rent free. It increases self esteem. By forgiving, you take back control of your emotions and your life. Having a forgiving spirit will enhance other relationships. It lowers health risks related to blood pressure, strengthens your immune system, and enhances sleep. It frees up mental and emotional energy. When you hold a grudge, you are using up internal energy. Some things are so traumatic that you may not be able to do it on your own. Some trauma needs therapy, but here we are talking about things you can control. Another point is that it does not matter if the person asks to be forgiven. Forgiveness is something you do in your heart for yourself. The other person is not relevant. When you hold on to anger and resentment, you're allowing them to continue hurting you. When you let go of that, they have no power over you. For some, forgiving someone means you let go of the pain. It is not about reconciling with the person. If you steal from me, I will forgive you, but I will also choose not to put myself in that situation again by hanging out with you. Forgiveness does not mean you have to trust them again. Reconciliation involves restoring the relationship, and that is not always possible. We are never called to be doormats or to put up with abuse. In those situations, reconciliation would probably not be possible. Forgiveness does not involve the other person, but reconciliation does. If you are to restore a relationship, both parties have to give to the relationship equally. Poet and author Elizabeth Barrett Browning is probably best known for the words she wrote in a letter to her future husband. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Her father, Edward, was a controlling man who forbid any of his 12 children to marry. And when Elizabeth married Robert Browning, her father never spoke to her again. Elizabeth wrote weekly letters to her father in the hope they might be reconciled, but for 10 years there was no response. Then one day, after a decade of silence, a box came in the mail from her father. Her excitement quickly turned to anguish, however, when she opened it and found it contained all of her letters unopened. Edward Barrett's heart was so hardened towards his daughter that he didn't open a single one of the hundreds of letters that she wrote to him. An unforgiving person has no future because when we are consumed by our emotions of the past and we are stuck there, we are bound to repeat it. And it's a prophecy of your present and future. As long as you hold on to the hot coal of resentment, it will burn a hole in your soul. So, this is the promise of the first 9 steps. We showed up because we were suffering from our addictions, only to discover that it is our humanity that is the cause. The thing that makes me me, my humanity, is my free will. It lives at the epicenter of my suffering. If you recall, I asked this question at the beginning of the workshop. What is the source of your suffering? There are many responses that may come to mind, but ultimately, as described in the big book and through my own personal experience, it is my selfish and self-centeredness that are running and ruining my life. Bill has promised freedom from our addictions, to be placed in a position of neutrality, but also that we are not cured in reference to our unmanageability and addictions. The first half of the first step has 2 components regarding addiction. Firstly, when I start, I cannot stop. Secondly, when I do stop, I can't stay stopped without my higher power. On page 62, Bill says that we can't even reduce it much by wishing on our own power. The shadow is what prevents us from having an effective relationship with power. Unmanageability is the creator of the chaos, and as the slide depicts, the chains are not attached to anything but myself. Just fearful Lisa, the victim of a fearful world filled with delusions. And all I have to do is drop those chains by taking responsibility for my suffering and irrational fears, and then walking away from the illusion of control to the safety of the creator of me and my life. As in all things, when I accept that God is everything, I can't define it factually, but I can confirm that I have been created. Therefore, there is a creator. On page 84, are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are constantly being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. I'm not sure if Bill W. had this insight or not, and whether he structured it this way intentionally on purpose, but it is a splendid description of the conversion experience, that turnaround from the bedevilments that our multiple inventories delivered us to in order to live a life on principles. This is the unmanageability manifesting within our personal relationships. But the good news is that once we completely finish the 9th step, it can happen sooner. but it is guaranteed in the big book by the end of the ninth step. Now, the ninth step says before we're halfway through, which appears to be Bill throwing us a bone of hope to keep going. But I believe what Bill W. was actually trying to convey in his instructions was that if addicts are painstaking in working their ninth step amends to a finish, they will then experience profound, positive, and amazing transformation. We conveniently hear the ninth step, but he actually says by the end of the ninth step, indicating we have finished our amends. So keep that in mind. Some people get to the ninth step and they say, oh, here come the promises. I'm all set. We got to finish the ninth step, not just get to it. So we enter the world of the spirit as we finish up step 9 from Bill's description and instructions. But we ask ourselves, well, where have we been then? We have been living in the world of self. Most of us have seen that our minds do not successfully process reality. And this is probably true of all human beings, but not to the degree of an addict. We did not learn from the consequences of our behaviors. Most functional people learn from their mistakes, especially when they're severe, such as prison time, hospitalizations, losing employment, getting fired repeatedly, and the destruction of relationships, and many other chaotic lifestyles that addiction causes. Most people grow up and are taught to take responsibility for their lives at a proper age and the impact of their choice of behaviors. But we all lean on our free will until we learn that it's not really free at all in our learned unmanageability. My will is condemned very definitely to choose me. Now, this is not just the addict's issue, this is the whole condition of the human being. It's an equal opportunity life destroyer. In step 8 and 9, we take responsibility to correct all that harm that was done. It's a process of deep change, not unlike a spiritual awakening, as the result of these steps, a change in the way we think and feel and behave. And this is done to us, not by us, but most importantly, not without us. A change in our attitude requires acceptance of reality, and that is an immense shift. Many of us take reality personally, even though it is not personal, it just is what it is. And we have taken the time to list the principles that we wanted to develop, desirable principles for living our life, so that we will be in alignment with reality. But it won't happen without action. I change my attitude, I accept reality, and then I take action. And we're rocketed into the fourth dimension, which is our spiritual shield. A relationship with power that signifies a relationship with something beyond ourselves, something bigger than ourselves. It is a continual practice because we are not perfect, and perfection should never be the goal. It is not healthy to expect perfection in any area, but to instead expect progress. And what do we practice? We practice our step 10 on the daily basis. We do this in order to get free from the unmanageability. We are empowered to manage our lives properly every single day. It surely doesn't make sense to finally get our minds free only to let something else manage it. But it provides empowerment much like a cell phone needs a power source. Step 10 is about emotional sobriety, to recognize when I'm out of alignment and to realign myself on that spot. So ask yourself, do I have a sense of well being? Here we are, more than half a year later, You're the survivors. Even if you came in late, you are doing this work, talking about it, getting serious about your lives. So, do you have a sense of well being or do you have new hope now? If not, it's on the horizon as the result of this work. Do you have a feeling of contentment? These types of questions lead us into emotional sobriety because they're not about addiction, they're about unmanageability or manageability. And it's time to look at that dimmer switch analogy again. Here it exists by a very low voltage with a very small amount of electricity surging through the wires. But as we put more electricity to the switch, as we add more voltage to the switch, more power, the light becomes brighter to enhance our higher self's vision. And the best part is that we are in relationship with the source of the light, and there is no end to this source. Listen to this promise as we exit from step 9. The promises will always materialize if we work for them. And this thought brings us to step 10. Well, step 10, 11, and 12, actually. This is our new way of life, our daily reprieve because we are not cured, a daily maintaining of this spiritual shield that protects us from the return of the obsession, which means relapse is inevitable. This is an uplifting prayer from Marianne Williamson about forgiveness that I really like, wanted to share with you. Dear God, please teach me to forgive myself and others. Remove the walls that keep love out, behind which I am the prisoner. Heal my guilt and remove my anger that I might be reborn. Make gentle my heart and strong my spirit and show me how to love. And that is our presentation for tonight. So if anyone has questions or comments, experiences, oh, and if anyone wants to comment on if they feel contentment at this point or not, that would be great to hear.
I love the forgiveness slide. Wonderful.
The forgiveness, the prayer.
The forgiveness slide? No, the process.
Oh, the process. Thank you, Dee Dee.
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
So thank you for the permission to proceed with forgiving, knowing that reconciliation would not be in my best interest. I really am grateful for that information. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Pass.
You know, it's interesting because sometimes when we're offering an amends to somebody, and it might be an ex-husband, ex-boyfriend, ex-lover, whatever, they sometimes think we have an ulterior motive and that we want to reconcile or get back with them. So if you're about to make an amends with an ex and they're kind of acting squarely, you can explain to them that it's not about reconciling and that's the furthest thing from your mind, just to keep them present. But it's very common for people to think that if we apologize, we have to go back. And we don't. We apologize for ourselves, not for the relationship, not for the children, not for the mothers, fathers, nobody else. Just we do it because it keeps us sober from our addictions, whatever those are, people, food, drink, alcohol, sex, money. I mean, the list goes on and on. You guys know the list. So, yeah, an apology is not an invitation ever, really. I mean, it can be if you want, but generally speaking, no. Most people that have moved on to an amends are not moving on to get back together. Hi, Carol.
Hi, I just wanted to comment. I feel much more content now. I had this terrible resentment toward my sister, and She just put her dog to sleep last week. And I was particularly attentive to the fact that I be very kind and nice. And I called her and I sent her a lovely card, and I felt really good about it. And she sent me this angry comments. It's been 13 days since I put my dog to sleep, and and you haven't called me. And I did call her, and it's amazing, but the anger and the resentment just melted away. And I called her back, and she wasn't there. I left a voicemail, and I said, I did call you, and I sent you a card. I said, in the past, at FA meetings, I would get annoyed with you if you came in late and was judgmental, and I really regret that. But I said, I really thought that I was being a very thoughtful, because I know how much your dog meant to you. And a couple days later, she responded and said, and apologized, and said that, her feelings were raw right now, and she really apologized. She understood that she was wrong. So that, you know, that's pretty significant for me.
That's fantastic. And
Yeah.
it's that old saying, when you change, everything changes around you by osmosis.
Yeah.
Somebody has to be the ringleader, and that obviously is going to be you. But, usually the saner person is the one that makes the first move. So, it's always nice when we take the initiative to say, I want to feel good. I want to feel recovered. So I'm going to put myself out there and be the one that does what nobody else wants to do. So that's fantastic that,
Yeah.
you know,
I also appreciate the fact that you said that even though you make an amends, doesn't mean that you want it doesn't mean that you want to get back together with that person or
right.
see that person all the time and all that stuff. I don't, but at least I don't have that horrible anger and resentment that was just eating my soul.
Exactly. Exactly. Which she didn't even have a hand in.
No.
That when you think of it that way. Um, I tell people, I love you, but I don't want to have lunch with you.
I like that.
And I really feel that way. I do. I love you. You're a human being. You might be a family member. And I love you as a human being, but I don't want to be in a relationship with you
Right.
because I'm too important now. In the day when I wasn't so important, I would be in the relationships that weren't good for me because I was such a people pleaser and so addicted to people. I had to have them in my life at any cost, and it takes a very big toll. So when we get on the other side of that and we can look at it and say, yeah, I love you. You're my sister, but I don't want to see you. You know,
That's important. No,
it
it
is.
really is.
You can love somebody and not want to have a sleepover. You know, you don't have to do anything with them. In
Right.
fact, usually those people are, unless they're in recovery too, pretty much ends the relationship. But it wasn't healthy anyway, so what good is a relationship like that? But I'm
Exactly.
glad you're making some progress with your sister. I know that's a really big
Yeah.
gully for you to
Thank you.
overcome.
I really appreciate all your help. Thank you.
You're
Can
doing
I
great,
say
Carol.
something?
Absolutely.
Joanna, I guess when you were saying that, I am on 12-step programs, and the step that says, uh, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I say, I learned through the years, when I make amends, I do make them for me. And it releases me from the bondage of self because it goes around and around in my head.
Exactly.
And also that, I guess before I was in program, I would say things. I still am pretty upfront, but I would say things and it wasn't it wasn't healing anything. It was really making it me farther away from the other person, place, or thing. And so now I feel more mindful, and sometimes I have to say something, but I have to pray about it. I have to wait a while so that I could say it from my heart instead of saying it from my head, and not to hurt the other person, just to say that I'm sorry for sometimes I'm sorry for what I said, not how I said it. How I say something, not what I said, but how I say it. And that for me, makes a big difference. And I usually know, like, in a nanosecond when I say something, anything, I know in a nanosecond, like, oh my God, why did I do that? So I'm more aware, and I don't, I'm really, I learned a lot about not pointing the finger.
Good. That's a great start. Thank you, Joanna. I was having dinner tonight, and my mother-in-law is staying with us, and her and my husband got into a fight, and I picked up my plate and I put it in the sink, and I went in the other room and did my thing. And normally I wouldn't do that. I would stay there and I would try to make peace, and I would try to say, well, this is what he's trying to say, and that's what she's trying, and I said, I don't have to do this. I'm tapping out and I'm leaving the table. And she apologized. She said, I'm sorry, that upset you. And I said, no, you didn't upset me. I just didn't feel the need to sit there and listen. If you want to be upset and you want to do those things, that's your prerogative. But I'm not going to sit through it. I love you, but I'm not going to have dinner with you if you're going to fight. It's in a sense, for me, love has become more conditional when it's the really close relationships, because I I know that there's more now and I expect more from people. I show up differently, whereas before I would show up for any little morsel and it would be enough. Now I know there's so much more, and I deserve so much more, that there is a condition to be in a tight relationship with me. You have to show up and you have to do the right stuff. Where before it could be just anybody could show up. So there is a progression. Are you raising your hand, Michelle? Go ahead.
You weren't finished talking, Lisa. So.
I was just saying that there's a progression where, I would have loved anybody for any reason, no matter what. Now I stop and say, I do love you, but I'm not going to tolerate this, or I'm not even going to be in a relationship with you. And I can love you from afar. I don't have to be in your presence. And that's okay. There's no relationship in the universe that causes me harm that I'm going to stay in anymore. It doesn't matter who the person is. And that's why I say I love conditionally now. There are conditions to being in loving relationships. And the first one is you have to be loving, basically. But go ahead, Michelle.
I was thinking, it wasn't till I'm in OA, so I've been in OA for years, but it wasn't till I started hearing more about codependency that I realized how many of my relationships I wasn't being treated well, yet I needed that person to think I was wonderful, because otherwise I couldn't think I was good enough. So I really liked what you were just saying about, that we deserve to be loved and respected for who we are. I tended to attract, and I don't understand this still, attract people who had to be in charge. So, and it would be little things like when my husband was still alive, we would go out to a movie with one couple, and she would insist on where we parked. And my husband would say, but I'm driving. She'd say, no, 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 it's cheaper to park over, whatever. And yet I kept going back to that well. I kept, for whatever reason, I liked them, whatever. And then I made an amends for, I don't know what I made the amends for. I wrote a note and made the amends. And her husband called me the next day, and we hadn't talked in a long time, and said, "Oh, I was so glad to hear from you. We missed you. We want to get together." And so we got together, and it started all over again, with we need to park here. We need to go to this restaurant, that restaurant, and it was easier just to let her, she directed him to her own husband, but it was just easier to let her do that. But I gave away my power doing that. I mean, I just knew when I came home, but yet I thought, well, they've done some really nice things for us. So I have to stay connected and I have to do whatever it takes to stay connected. And I thought later, if I'm making an amends and I'm not sure what I'm making the amends for, because I just wrote a note that said, whatever I did to cause this, I'm really sorry. And so they accepted it. I still don't know what I did. I don't know. My sponsor said, how do you know you did anything? But
Right.
that was the low self-esteem point. That was saying, I need to grovel. I need to do whatever to get back. And the real truth is, I need to have better friends, and I do have better friends, but it is, like I said, that whole codependency thing just
Mhm.
opened up my eyes,
Yeah.
and I could see more about why I was eating, because I wasn't just eating to eat. I was eating because of that on top of it. So
Yeah.
this program's so powerful. All the programs are
It
so
is.
powerful, so powerful.
It is. And if we're brought up or we live in a relationship where it's dysfunctional, we learn to people please because
Right,
it's peace at any price. We learn that very young that when there isn't peace in the house, it's chaos.
right.
So if I go along with whatever so and so says and it keeps the peace, then that's what I'm going to do. And it's a really bad place to bring yourself because you get so caught up in that, like you said, before you know it, you're not even yourself. You're just
Right.
running around pleasing everybody. And that's a leftover from, dysfunctional household. But when we really learn to love ourselves and to let go of people that we might love but can't tolerate or can't be around, that's when we really learn to love ourselves. Because it
You know,
takes a lot of self love to do
I
that.
used to joke that, and I thought it was funny, but my mother and father met when they were like 13, and they were
Wow.
together till my dad died at 91. But my dad always said it was because my mother was a very strong person and caused me a lot of grief. But my father was deaf in one ear, and so he would roll over in the good ear and just smile when she was talking to him and not respond to anything. And that's how they stayed, whatever kind of marriage they had, happily married or whatever, because he didn't listen to what she said. He didn't respond to it. He just kept smiling. And she thought he was agreeing with her for all those 80 some odd years. But the
Wow.
kids in the house, my brothers, it was a whole different story. We didn't
That's
do
right.
it her way. She just stopped talking to us for a period of time. And
And
she,
unfortunately, he was spoiling her by making
right,
her believe
right,
that, somebody would just come in and listen to whatever she
right,
says, and that was gospel.
right.
So, it's
And it
that
affected her
enabling thing.
parenting. Right. It
Yeah.
affected her parenting
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
us.
So,
So
a lot of
complicated.
times it looks like it's harmless, and then we find out down the road it's really harmful,
Right.
really harmful. So, hi, Sarah.
I wanted to make a comment that I'm making a living amends with my husband, and
How do you know enough about the woman who was abducted?
later. I thought he was watching TV anyway.
Of course.
But
Timing is everything.
sometimes I was speaking of the codependency. We've had a very codependent relationship, and I've been over the years in both codependency and um, the eating programs. I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm a food eater. Um, I've learned about um, well, the 12 steps have just been very helpful. And what's been really helping me the most is that he will sometimes come and turn to me for help but I feel like I'm in it, and I will be put in a position where I'm enabling him to do something that's either hurtful to him or to both of us, to me too. And so I'm learning to say no, or to leave. I've left the room if he's. I've sometimes I wake up in the morning. I think I ask God to help me respond, because if I say something, address him directly, you're criticized. He gets very defensive. And it just seems to make it worse. And I've learned to I just sit back and smile and just nod, and I don't respond. And he can talk about the politics or whatever it is that's bugging him, the grudges he's got against different people, and I don't really respond to it. I just feel, well, I kind of am like a witness. I'm more of a witness to what he's venting. And I used to try to present my side of it or present other options. He didn't want to hear about other options. It just leads to an argument. So was I'm I'm finding that I just have to ask my higher power how to respond. And I am learning to just listen, and sometimes to not say anything at all, or to not take any action at all, other than to maybe sometimes I physically leave the room. It makes things smoother. There's not so much tension. So I've just learned that over the last few years, especially now that we're getting older. So
I have a question for you.
yeah,
How has he handled the change that you've made since you've been in the program? Has it made him
he's
worse, better?
he's a little resentful. He thinks it's a cult. No, it's not a cult. And I usually, sometimes he will, if he knows I'm on a program, I tell him I'm going to be on a Zoom call for an hour, and then I come out and we have a conversation. I'll go up when this meeting is over, and he saw something on TV that he wanted me to know about it. I can't do it right now. I'm on a Zoom call. So
Yeah.
no, he knows that when I'm finished with, then I can spend more time with him. And if I can help him, I can help him. But other times, if I feel it's an enabling behavior, then I'm getting older, and I just can't say I can't do that anymore. Can't do that anymore. And he has to find other ways to get it done. And he'll turn to our children. He calls our kids, and one of my son-in-laws helps out. So there's other people that can step in besides me. So it
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's great.
works out a different way. So
But you do get to a place where you say, like I did at the dinner table, I'm just going to get up and leave the
yeah,
table.
you have to.
There was no animosity. I wasn't angry. I was just, I don't need my peace of mind spoiled. So I'm just going to walk away.
Yeah, you have to
And
be.
a lot of it is in how you approach it, and how you do things. And, you say what you mean, but you don't be mean when you say it. And I have a bunch of old slogans from even decades ago, but there's a lot of good stuff in those slogans. We really want to, it's not going to do us any good if we're behaving in a way that we're constantly making amends, which tells us we're probably doing something wrong. And, we have to look at other people that aren't in recovery for whatever reason and see them as, like having that bandage on their head because they're broken too. And
I think I
sometimes,
want to say also that previously I was really very critical and judgmental. I don't really judge him or other people anymore. I've really
Mhm.
tried to get a handle on my criticism and judgmental, because I don't. Who am I to be a judge? I don't, as Herb has said, we all look through colored lenses, and
That's right.
I've really cut back a lot on that, and I just listen, and sometimes by listening and watching the way things turn out, I realized that my initial assumptions were way off, really way off. And I'm glad I didn't speak out because I would have been way off the mark completely. So sometimes, I learn by just kind of sitting in the corner and just seeing how things turn out and let somebody else manage it. God's up there managing it. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Well, they
that's
say that in that space where the pause is, that's where the Holy Spirit lives. And,
mhm.
being the people that we are, we want to get to the end line as fast as we can. And we're going 90 miles an hour, thinking and talking. We don't even realize the effect that we're having on people. So when we take the time to pause in those moments when we want to lash out or speak out or whatever it is, it just becomes a really good thing to start practicing, even when you don't need the pause, just to get yourself used to pausing so that when you do get in a situation where you really need to pause, it's kind of comes automatic. So practicing that pause is a really good way to get yourself to a place where you're not jumping into other people's crap or helping them when they don't need help and doing all those enabling things. So think about that pause. You can even pray about the pause. Please, Holy Spirit, give me more pause. But it's so powerful in that silence because silence can be very uncomfortable, but it can also be very healing because we sit there in that silence and we don't have to do anything or say anything or fix anything. We just sit there and we just be one with whatever. It sounds really zen, but you know, I think they knew what they were doing when they were making everything zen. So try the pause. I think you're doing great anyways, but think of the pause because it's one of those teeny tiny little things that really helps a huge amount. And it's just a little pause. So hit the pause button. Would anyone else like to share or have any questions?
Yeah, does anybody have their hands up or can I jump in?
Nope. Go ahead, Mark.
So I think one of the interesting things though that I'm still working on that was kind of interesting development is just like that it's more eight, but in the homework you mentioned it a lot in terms of like the forgiveness side of nine, which is really eight. But it kind of came up because I realized like there's some resentments that I've had and I've done a lot of work on. Like one, for example, and I'm sure maybe other people have had it towards a whole fellowship that I still go to. So it kind of came up, and I did a lot of inventory on one of the fellowships that I still go to, and so I got some feedback when I was sharing on. I think on Saturday that I needed to do more inventory on the same resentment. I've done like I can't even say how many, on it's a 12-step program, one of the ones that I attend, and I got the feedback that I should forgive and so forth and so on, and it was kind of interesting because I got mixed feedback on this particular resentment, and so I've just been kind of like and it's not like a deep resentment, and I think one of the things that I'm struggling with in terms of an amends is that the things that for example, the things that I said when I was talking to my sharing partner, they weren't untrue. Like some of the things, for example, that I said is like I find that people in the particular fellowship that I have the resentment towards, that I find them unreliable, difficult to communicate with, and these are different things over the course of like 25 years or something like that. And so like the feedback I got from my sharing partner is that I needed to work on this, but then when I talked about it with some of the other people in my support circle, they were kind of like I got mixed feedback, which kind of like is why I'm bringing it to this group. And what I've gotten from God so far is just to like kind of do maybe like a another inventory with somebody else, maybe 10 step, but also just to really kind of focus on forgiveness and just the idea that do I want to be right or happy? And,
Mhm.
and I know that I've heard this from you even when you shared like like over the course when you were talking about
Yeah.
different examples. Like, well, I'll be straight. Like when you were talking about, I think your ex-husband, like that kind of came up when you were using him as an example, and so that's like over the last like 3 days, that's been sort of like what would kind of come up in terms of my prayer life with God is that I might be right about people in one of the fellowships I attend as far as like some of the negative behavior I don't like, but am I happy around that? You know what I mean? Like, am I as happy as I could be around that?
And what was your answer?
Well, my answer is no, but I'm right. You know what I mean? I
So
like
you're
being
happy
right.
being right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I hear it. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're attending a meeting where you're, working on becoming a better person and you're feeling like there's negativity in the room, um, there might be negativity in the room and you might need to find a different room. If the negativity is coming from yourself, you need to do another resentment and you got to keep doing the resentments till you get to the bottom of that list and you no longer have the resentment because we we really shouldn't or can't make amends if we haven't done the resentment work first. Because what happens is we go and we make the amends and we feel great and then the crap just keeps happening and we're like, "Oh, do I keep making amends?" Well, no, that's old behavior. That's what we're trying to get away from. So we have to, you know, get to a place where we say, "Okay, is this working for me or not? And why am I still here? Am I getting something positive from it? Maybe it's because I'm used to the group or it's a convenient location or a convenient time. But you gotta look at the pros and the cons. If you're in a meeting and it's causing you distress or you feel like you need to write a resentment worksheet every time you attend, it's probably time to place an ad for a new meeting. Because sometimes, and Herb will say this too, the solution is only to walk away. That that is an option that can come up when we've tried everything else. Sometimes the only thing left is we walk away. And that's any kind of relationship. So, yeah, you got to figure out why you're going if it's causing you distress. And if the distress is yours, then doing the resentment worksheets will show you that. And then you can decide, okay, this is me. And I'm glad I found out it's me because I'm going to stay in the group and they're going to show me how to heal it because we don't learn from the nice people in our lives. We learn from the bad people and the bad places and the crap that we go through. So if you're in a crappy meeting and it's bringing you further down the road of recovery, that would be a good trade-off. So you got to look at it, Mark, and decide, what's really going on. And then once you figure out what's really going on, then you make the choice, what do I do about it? Do I stay or do I go? And any of those options can work. And we have to remember that when we're not happy, it's not coming from outside of ourselves. So if you're in a meeting and the meeting sucks, I'm not going to say you suck because it's not that simple, but I am going to say what part of it is bringing up something in you. Because if it is bringing up something in you, then that something needs to be healed. So that's my point in suggesting you might want to stay in the meeting if it's showing you parts of yourself that you haven't been able to see before that you're now ready to heal. And anyone else can give their advice on that. That's how I would look at it. I think everybody that comes into our life is either looking for love or extending love. So if you're running into somebody that's a real bother, they probably are feeling a lack of love. So sometimes extending love is all that relationship needs. And then a lot of people come into our lives just to love us, and those are the fantastic ones. But, if we're in a group and there's a lot of people in there that we're struggling with, we have to look at ourselves, because generally whole groups of people don't upset one person. Generally, nothing's ever 100%, but we always have to go back to ourselves and say, why is this upsetting me? What is this about? What is this trying to tell me about myself? And it might just be trying to tell you go to a new meeting, but you want to get to that place where you get that answer, unless for some strange reason the meeting's doing something positive for you other than making you feel good about yourself. But, do some writing on it. Go ahead, Joanna.
I was just going to say that I remember a long time ago, somebody said, when I have a problem with people, places, and things, the problem lies with me. And it's not that somebody else didn't do something, but I have to look over here and say, okay, what is bothering me about it? And I totally agree with you about when I go to a meeting, if I have a problem with something that's said or done, and I stick around and I work on it, and I still don't feel comfortable, then it's time for me to move on.
Yes. If what I do in my life is, if I've done everything that I can do and nothing changes, I can comfortably walk away because I know I've done everything I can do. I've given it 100%. I don't like to walk away when I've only given 50% because I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. But like even in a relationship, when I leave a relationship, I know I've done everything. It's time to close the book. And I close the book and I don't go back because I closed the book. That's how I do things. But I can do that because I know I've exhausted every other avenue. Because it could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know, but I feel better about my decisions when I know I've put 100% into the decision making. Go ahead, Michelle.
One of the things I had a lot of trouble with, and I occasionally have trouble with this in the program is I worked in industry, and if you had a meeting, somebody was in charge and somebody made the rules, and there was like a boss and then the other people. And it isn't like that at program meetings. And it would be like somebody would ask for a group conscience at a meeting I was at, and things would 2 weeks later things would change, and my head went to, well, what happens if I don't like it? Can I in 2 weeks ask to change it back? How does this? And it took me a long time to realize there really aren't any rules. Every meeting is independent, and I think that's where, like Joanna said, and you said, if you get to the point where I go to a meeting and there's a guy who says this every week, and it's become like our byword. It's all I want is a peaceful mind and a quiet heart, especially at this stage in my life, at late 70s. And if I'm not going to get that at that meeting, then especially with Zoom, there are a million other meetings. And I don't want to come out of a meeting with more resentments than I went in,
Exactly.
and I've occasionally had that happen. And most of the time it's been fine. And I think because I've done some work, that a lot of times I just don't, especially on Zoom, I can kind of zone out for some of the stuff that whatever. But the ultimate thing is I'm looking for a peaceful mind and a quiet heart. And if I can't get that, then I got to look somewhere else. So
I agree. And I think that's a coming of age kind of feeling, It's like, you know what? Been there, done that. I'm just looking for some peace now. If I walk into a meeting and it doesn't feel right, I'm gonna walk out. Not a big deal. Because like you said, it's like 100,000 meetings online. 100,000, hundreds of thousands online. So, if it's a in-person meeting, that's a little bit different. If you want to be somewhere local and it's near your house and you've gotten used to, some of the people, and that's a little bit different scenario, but still you have to say to yourself, is it worth going to this meeting if I'm
right.
feeling like every time I attend, I have to do another worksheet? That's not how life is supposed to be done. We shouldn't have to depend on a a worksheet to keep us in a meeting.
Right. Well, even Carol, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but in the past when you've talked about your sister and whatever, I could tell there was, and you just spoke like so peacefully tonight. It was a joy to see it. I mean, I don't know if you feel that way, but your body language was like, and the way you were talking, I thought, wow, she's got a peaceful mind and a quiet heart about this. It's I get to see recovery in other people, and that's what keeps me coming back. So that was really, really inspirational.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And that's the beauty of the recovery, is that what she saw in Carol, that grows every day, because Carol's going to water that plant of recovery. She's going to keep thinking about the relationship with his sister and how much it harms her through her own thoughts. So it's a progression of what we learn.
Right.
And we can go in either directions. Sometimes I'll attend a meeting and I'll realize after a few meetings I'm going a little bit in a different direction, because you don't see it at first, but as it builds, it starts to tell us something. And it's a choice. Do I want to be right, or do I want to be happy?
Yeah.
And being right, it, as Mark sees, it costs a lot. It takes a lot away from us trying to be right. And we've all come from that. We all want to be right. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I mean, yeah, let's go for it. But I know that we can't, so I don't want to spend my time trying to achieve something for nothing. So, would anyone else like to speak or comment on Mark's comment? All righty. So we will do the serenity prayer. If you guys want to unmute or not unmute, totally up to you. All right. God, please grant us the serenity to accept the things that cannot change, the courage to change the things that can, and the wisdom
to know
the
the difference.
Keep up the good work, everybody. All of you are doing fantastic work. I hope you all feel at least a little contentment in the realization that you really are pioneers in this program, because you're all sticking it out and you're all doing the work. It shows. It really shows from this perspective. So I'm really happy for all of you, and I'm glad that you're really embracing this information and applying it, and it's great to watch.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank
You're all
you, Lisa.
wonderful.
Everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. I will
Thank
see
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. I'll see you next week.